welcome. I am Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump has stated that he is unhappy but not surprised by Russian strikes on Kiev and has urged both sides to end the war. This comes after the strike at Kiev yesterday, which killed at least 23 people. The UN Security Council has approved the final extension for UN peacekeepers in Lebanon with withdrawal scheduled for 2027. The vote comes amid pressure from Israel and the United States. Israeli military targets Houthi rebel positions near the Yemeni capital Sanaa. The strike comes after Houthis launched missiles and drones against Israel as well as shipping routes. The United Nations has urged Iran and global powers to finalize a nuclear deal within 30 days in order to avoid new UN sanctions. The UN spokesperson has called it a window for peace. Brazil's foreign ministry has ordered Chemex to study using reciprocity law against US trade measures. The law allows countermeasures such as tariffs. The United States has ended tariff exemptions on small imported packages, raising fears of higher consumer prices. The Trump administration has now cited abuse of duty-free shipments. U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has criticized the CDC after the chief's removal, calling for an overhaul. He claims that the agency failed during COVID-19 and had questioned its past public health claims. US President Donald Trump will address the United Nations General Assembly in New York on the 23rd of September, marking his first speech in his second term. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. What exactly is transpiring as far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned? We're now learning that Russia's defense ministry has reported that its air defense systems intercepted and destroyed 54 Ukrainian drones overnight across multiple Russian regions. The statement did not specify exact locations or whether any damage or casualties were reported. Meanwhile, independent verification was also not immediately available, and Ukrainian officials have not commented. The announcement comes amid ongoing cross-border drone activity as the conflict between the two countries continues. Meanwhile, recent Russian strikes on Kiev killed at least 23 people and injured 48 others, prompting widespread global condemnation. The attacks targeted civilian areas, further escalating international calls for peace. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has commented on the probable Putin-Zelensky meet as Trump has been mooting for the last couple of days. The leader has stated that it is obvious that such a meeting between the two leaders will not happen anytime soon, highlighting the political standstill that still exists. Joining us on the broadcast this morning is Mr. Glenn Grant, former advisor to the Defense Minister of Ukraine. He's joining us from Kiev. Thank you so much for taking our time sitting with us on NewsX. First up, I'd like to ask you, what is the situation like in Ukraine at this point? The last we spoke, the strikes were taking place and 23 innocent people had lost their lives. Russia now claims that it has intercepted and destroyed Ukrainian drones even further. Yet, the barrage of attacks against civilians has not abated.
Well, your last point is absolutely right. I mean, the barrage against civilians has not abated at all. I mean, it's carrying on. It's carrying on as though there have been no discussions about peace. And I think this highlights the fact that Russia intends to keep fighting as long as it can before maybe it's forced to peace or whatever. But it hasn't stopped. Now in Kiev, and I'm in Lviv now. The people are more cautious. There's no question about that. The fact that the attacks are getting larger is making more people head for bunkers and underground. But the morale is not dimmed in any way, shape, or form. Life goes on, and life goes on in quite a lively fashion, I would say, in the rear area. That's not the same, of course, for the front line. The boys in the front line are fighting hard and are still being pushed back just by sheer force of Russian numbers and drones. But Russia is not making much ground. I don't think anybody should think that there's great breakthroughs happening. There aren't. It's very small, and but it's relentless. And Ukraine is going to have to do something about both actions, about the drones attacking them and about the front line at some stage soon.
Indeed, and a quick follow-up to that, I just refer to the fact that the German Chancellor has commented upon the idea that Trump has been mooting for the last couple of days of a possible meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Friedrich Merz has come out and stated that he does not think this is possible in the near future. Do you concur?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think one's got to ignore what Trump and Witkoff and people at Rubio are saying, because it's quite clear that they are adrift from the reality of what is actually going on in the war. Whereas the German Chancellor has now understood, especially because Germany is actually being attacked by hybrid warfare a lot more than people actually hear on the open news. So he understands the situation, and he understands that Putin is intent on continuing this war, and that Germany and the other European countries have to step up the plate and actually support Ukraine better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Grant, for taking our time, speaking with us live, sharing your perspective on the latest that is coming in from Ukraine. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting focus to the economic realm. We are now learning that Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and his Brazilian counterpart, Mauro Vieira, have held a phone call in order to boost mutual trust and support. China is willing to join hands with Brazil as well as other BRICS countries in order to resist unilateralism and, as they term, bullying. Not only this, Wang Yi has also stated that it would safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of developing countries and improve the global governance system. That's not all. Vieira has echoed the urgency of the moment, warning that multilateralism is under severe strain. He has reaffirmed Brazil's interests in working closely with China and other BRICS members in order to protect the rules-based global trading system. This all comes as Trump's ongoing tariffs are creating a lot of uncertainty, especially with regards to the larger international trade network. Joining us on the broadcast is Dr. Sharad Kohli. He's a senior economist, joining us live from New Delhi. What's interesting is that this telephonic conversation between Wang Yi and his Brazilian counterpart comes a mere fortnight after Brazilian President Lula da Silva had dialed Xi Jinping, and the statement that they've put forth right now echoes the one that was put forth 2 weeks earlier as well. Are we seeing now a greater thrust of the BRICS nations, because a de-dollarization has been in the murmur for a very long period of time, though there have been efforts to resist this, especially on New Delhi's end, in order to balance ties with the US, but the US does not seem to be backing down and has in fact put punitive tariffs on India.
Well, greetings, Pia. Greetings to the viewers of NewsX World. Well, indeed, a new world order is shaping up. Well, BRICS, some time ago had taken a bit of a backseat. We were not seeing a very strong BRICS from the time it was formed. I'm talking of probably a few months earlier. But now, thanks to President Donald Trump, he has given a new vigor to BRICS with India, China, Russia, the RIC already coming together, SCO summit likely to happen, BRICS, Brazil likely to, also join in. I think it's high time for a BRICS currency. And this, the domination of the dollar across the world, it is high time that it needs to be curtailed, because it has been unilateral bullying, I would say, of rest of the world. It seems that the world is riding the same boat apart from America, because tariffs have been levied practically on every country. India and Brazil may be facing 50%, but there is hardly any nation on which there is no tariffs. So practically everybody is facing tariff, and even China, for that matter, it may be on hold for 3 months, but constant threats keep coming from the US. About only a couple of days ago, we heard about 200% tariffs because the US wants China to behave in a particular manner. So I think rest of the world is not very happy with what the White House is doing as of now. And it is time to unite. And I'm sure if, organizations like BRICS and some of the others, they unite together, I think America would get the message that it'll probably feel isolated, it'll feel alienated, and it will have nowhere to go because America can't live in isolation. So I'm so glad the SCO summit is happening. And the Indian Prime Minister is also attending that. And the conversation between the Brazilian and the Chinese finance minister also carries a lot of importance. So now it's going to be BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China. And I would also like to advise them to call South Africa as well. So at least the first lot of BRICS is complete. Then, of course, the rest of the nations can follow. But although this is going to agitate the US administration a little more than what it is, but I'm sure they're going to learn the hard way. As the world unites, it's going to be more and more difficult for the US to handle its international relations sphere.
Indeed, and speaking of the BRICS, there's been a very interesting statement that's come forth from France. French President Emmanuel Macron recently dialed Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. France is going to be holding the G7 presidency next year. India affirmed its support to France in that regard. But what's most interesting is that India is going to be holding the BRICS presidency next year. And France, incidentally, which is a NATO ally, it has now come out and stated that it will support India's BRICS presidency. What do you make of this statement? All right, sir, there seems to be a connectivity issue. I think we've got you back. I would like to repeat my question. What do you make of France's support to India as far as India's 2026 BRICS presidency is concerned?
Well, the fact that a NATO active nation is supporting India is a big deal. And, NATO, after President Trump, has had a different shape. We are seeing a different kind of NATO. We are not seeing America so entwined in NATO as it was earlier. We are seeing NATO slightly, differing in its opinion from America. So I think even NATO, some of the other organizations like WTO, the Climate Accord, US seem to be following its own course from rest of the world, which is what I'm trying to see. So it is going to unite rest of the world. It is going to bring other countries closer to each other, because America was a driving force until now between the countries, between all organizations, for example, the UN. Now, practically, America is trying to pull out of every single world organization, either by action or by words or by gestures. So I feel France is supporting India for the BRICS presidency is a very welcome move. And once India holds the BRICS presidency, I think we'll be able to take more independent decisions which are in the interest of BRICS nations, Pia.
Indeed, sir. I request you to stay on with us as we're tracking further developments. We're now learning that the United States has ended tariff exemptions on small packages entering the country from abroad. The move, according to the Trump administration, aims to prevent the use of low-value shipments in order to evade tariffs or smuggle drugs. Parcels valued at or under $800 will no longer receive duty-free treatment, though some personal items and gifts remain excluded. Small businesses warn that this could lead to higher consumer prices. Dr. Kohli is still with us on the broadcast. What's interesting, Dr. Kohli, is that Donald Trump's decision to sunset the de minimis trade agreement has now resulted in more than 30 nations suspending parcel shipments to the United States. In fact, according to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the de minimis shipments coming into the U.S. were valued at more than $1.36 billion in 2024. So how will this move now impact consumers and the U.S. economy?
Yes, Pia, these smaller shipments, they include, documentary packets, they include samples which are sent for export and import approvals, they include personal gifts, they include personal items as well. So I think a reciprocatory step is being taken. For example, India has taken a step that any consignment coming from the US henceforth will be suspended. The India Post has been advised. So I think US's moves, to see a very protectionism-based policy is not going to sustain in the long run. And US will end up, as I said, I would like to reiterate, US will end up alienating itself trade-wise and otherwise, because we have seen relations of the US with some of the countries at an all-time low. We've never seen US at such low relations with some of the countries which have been friends with the US for a very, very long time. And then my worst fear is that inflation in US is going to fuel in the next few weeks. How is President Trump going to handle that situation? That's the big question, because inflation is going to hit the people of America. 350 million population of America will have to probably deal with inflation, and how that will be dealt with. US dollar will come under pressure. US might sink into recession. I wonder if President Trump has thought of that economic scenario in the weeks to come, Pia.
Especially considering the fact that their festive season is also around the corner. Thank you so much, Dr. Kohli, for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. We are shifting focus to more news coming in from the United States. We're now learning that White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has stated that US President Donald Trump has fired the CDC Director Susan Monares because she refused to resign and did not align with his mission. Now, additionally, Leavitt warned that other government officials who do not share his vision could also be removed. Let's in fact listen in to what other statements she made on this issue.
Look, what I will say about this individual is that her lawyer's statement made it abundantly clear themselves that she was not aligned with the president's mission to make America healthy again. And the secretary asked her to resign. She said she would, and then she said she wouldn't, so the president fired her, which he has every right to do. It was President Trump who was overwhelmingly reelected on November 5th. This woman has never received a vote in her life, and the president has the authority to fire those who are not aligned with his mission. A new replacement will be announced by either the president or the secretary very soon.
Meanwhile, U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has stated that there is a lot of trouble at the CDC and it will require changes over a long period of time in order to restore the agency's functionings. His comments, in fact, come a day after Monares was fired, followed by the resignation of three top CDC officials who had cited concerns over vaccine policies and misinformation. Let's listen in to what he said.
I would say is that, first of all, I will confirm that we let go Susan Monares yesterday. And I'm not going to talk about personnel issues, but, the CDC is an agency that is very troubled for a very long time. And anybody who lived through the COVID pandemic and all of these bizarre recommendations that were not science-based, all the misinformation, there's a lot of trouble at CDC, and it's going to require getting rid of some people over the long term in order for us to change the institutional culture and bring back pride and self-esteem and make that agency the stellar agency that it's always been. I'm very confident in the political staff that we have down there now that they're going to be able to accomplish that and ensure the competent functionality of.
All right, there, of course, we've heard what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has had to say. Meanwhile, joining us on the broadcast is Robinder Sachdev, who's an international affairs expert. He's joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has now criticized the CDC once again after their chief's removal. He's called for an overhaul. He claims that the agency failed during COVID-19 and has questioned its past public health claims. But what's interesting is that Robert F. Kennedy's own claims over vaccines are also rather questionable. So what do you make of the Trump administration's efforts to overhaul their public health body?
Couple of things, sure. The point is, who is in power? Who controls the levers of power, right? So Robert Kennedy's views, yes, seem to be very non-scientific, anti-science in fact, but they are the ones in power. They hold the levers, one. Secondly, big picture, what's happening, and of course with CDC, it's not only Robert F. Kennedy, though he had been the most vocal of the anti-vaccine voices. The Trump administration and Donald Trump himself, they see CDC as being, opposed to what view of the world they have and how they want the agency to go. Trump is expanding his presidential powers. Many of them are being challenged, right, in the courts and all. But in an overall sum, if you see the net result is that Trump has expanded presidential powers to quite a degree. And he's going after agencies, he's going after the Washington, D.C., mayor, you can say, or the city of Washington, D.C. The National Guard is taking it over. They're doing beautification, they're doing security, all of that. So in Trump's view and MAGA's view and Robert Kennedy has his own, mission which he calls MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. And they believe that what CDC is doing is anti-science, is against common sense, as they would say. So this is an outcome of that which we are seeing here now, which of course also means, by the way, a lot of research by the CDC going down the drain, because there is cost cutting also going on. And by cutting down on research and science, America exposes itself in the future to pandemics, disease, much more than otherwise.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us as we track further developments from the United States. US President Donald Trump will address the United Nations General Assembly on the 23rd of September. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has confirmed the date during her daily briefing, noting that preparations for the US President's speech are underway. Viewers, the 80th session of the UNGA opens on the 9th of September and a high-level general debate kicks off on the 23rd itself. And this means that Trump will be delivering his speech on the first day of the debate. Let's meanwhile listen in to what Caroline Leavitt had to say.
I also have a quick scheduling announcement for you today. The President will travel to New York City on September 22nd to address the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday, September 23rd.
Donald Trump has addressed the UNGA several times before during his first term as US President from 2017 to 2021. His debut speech in 2017 was fiery, warning that the US might totally destroy North Korea if threatened, and also mocked North Korean President Kim Jong-un as Rocket Man. He also denounced Iran's leadership and called the Iranian nuclear deal an embarrassment. Meanwhile, in 2018, he stressed his America First vision and rejected globalism. Additionally, in his 2019 address, Trump again emphasized upon nationalism, tariffs on China, and warnings about Iran and immigration. Meanwhile, in 2020, with the COVID-19 pandemic dominating global politics, Trump delivered a short pre-recorded statement blaming China for the spread of the virus while touting Middle East peace deals brokered by his administration. Now, his upcoming appearance will therefore mark his 5th UNGA address, but the first of his second term in office. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Robinder Sachdev. Thank you so much for waiting rather patiently. What's interesting is that this address is coming at a time when Trump is portraying punitive tariffs, reciprocal tariffs as a necessary tool in order to correct what he views as decades of unfair treatment by trading partners. In his previous addresses, he had highlighted that the US will not hesitate to weaponize trade in pursuit of its national interests. So are we then expecting the current address, the current speech, to also have this as a major aspect of focus?
Thank you. You laid it out very, very nicely, the context, as to his first speech, second speech, topics and all. This speech of Trump, I think, would be, in a way, radically different, but same, but much more bigger in vision and scope and the worldview. This is the first time that Trump will get a global audience, the United Nations, right? G20, you go meet with the 20 people. G7, you meet with the 7 countries and observers and all, right? But the UN is the world's architecture, so to say. So I think what we can expect on, as you said, if his speech is the first speech of that day, first show, he will set the context for the United Nations. And I think this time around, he'll be much bolder. He will lay out things very concretely as to how he thinks. The world right now is under reconstruction, I would say rebooting after the COVID pandemic, which brought the whole world to a pause, humanity for the first time ever totally locked down, then the Russia-Ukraine war. So all these two developments have in a way restarted a new calculus in the world. So Trump, however he defines it, but I think what Trump will lay out will be his vision of the new world matrix that is emerging.
Indeed, and speaking of the new world matrix, we do know that Trump is on a quest to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, something that he's not quite shy about. Even the White House official handle has tweeted out an image showcasing countries that have endorsed him. So could we expect his focus to also be on claims that he's been making recently about brokering peace deals and brokering ceasefire?
Oh, absolutely. We can expect that. That will be one piece or one pillar of his, vision. I think that he will lay out. He wants to be the president of global peace, or president of peace, right? So he could reinforce and repeat some of his claims, but then he could now maybe be sitting down, doing his homework, and seeing where are all in the world conflicts happening. Something happening in Papua New Guinea, or something happening between Peru and Chile. I think he could do that homework. And then in the UN, he could name out those countries and tell them, you stop your wars. And then he'll later say that. So yeah, he is very much, so this would be certainly a key thrust of his speech, I think. And what he will do, I think he will also lay out some threats that countries who do this will face this, or not do this will face this, which, for example, in tariffs right now, we are seeing, there are threats against, you name it, India, European Union, regarding the tariffs. The EU agreed, adjusted 15% tariff, agreed to invest $700 billion in buying American LNG, $600 billion more to invest, so $1.3 trillion. So that was under a threat, right? So India is facing a threat of tariffs 50% because India is buying Russian oil. So Trump, I think, would repeat, or maybe he could even devise newer threats in order to shape the new world order wherein America has a hegemony.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for providing your perspective on these very crucial developments. Meanwhile, viewers, tensions between the United States and Venezuela are rising amidst a large US naval buildup in the southern Caribbean, which Washington says is aimed at targeting Latin American drug cartels. The Trump administration has deployed 7 warships, including USS San Antonio, USS Iwo Jima, USS Fort Lauderdale, along with 1 nuclear-powered submarine and 4,500 service members, including 2,200 Marines. Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has denounced the moves as propaganda. Speaking at a military parade, Maduro has stated that the following.
Ni sanciones, ni bloqueos, ni guerra psicológica, ni asedio no han podido, no podrán, no hay, ni jamás, no hay forma de que le entren a Venezuela. Y todo lo que estamos... Hoy puedo decir, luego de 20 días continuos de anuncios, amenazas, guerra psicológica, luego de 20 días de asedio contra la nación venezolana, hoy estamos más fuertes que ayer. Hoy estamos más preparados para defender la paz, la soberanía y la integridad territorial que ayer. Mucho más.
Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, Venezuela's UN ambassador Samuel Moncada has warned that the introduction of a nuclear submarine in the Caribbean undermines hemispheric stability and violates the Treaty of Tlatelolco. Now, after meeting with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Moncada has issued the following statement.
Denunciamos ante el mundo con la mayor firmeza que la introducción de un componente nuclear en el Caribe atenta contra la estabilidad hemisférica, erosiona la confianza en el régimen internacional de no proliferación y desarme y pone en riesgo la paz y la seguridad tanto regionales como internacionales. Denunciamos ante el mundo con la mayor firmeza que la introducción de un componente nuclear en el Caribe atenta contra la estabilidad hemisférica, erosiona la confianza en el régimen internacional de no proliferación y desarme y pone en riesgo la paz y la seguridad, tanto regionales como internacionales.
Meanwhile, the White House maintains that the military buildup supports counter-drug efforts, with Caribbean nations allegedly supporting U.S. operations. This comes after Venezuelan government had rejected Washington's accusations of drug trafficking, stating that the U.S. was resorting to threats and defamation. In fact, Maduro had earlier announced the deployment of 4.5 million militiamen throughout the country, assuring that no empire will touch the sacred soil of Venezuela. Meanwhile, the U.S. government's official position is that Maduro is not a legitimate president. With that, viewers, it's a wrap on this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.